Welcome, everyone. My name is Valerie Kaler, and I'm joining you today from Houston, Texas. And we're so thrilled that you're here today for the United States debut of Eoin Colfer's Fowl Twins. More antics, more adventure. We're so excited. And I would like to welcome to the scene Eoin Colfer, author of the Fowl Twins, which is a subset, sequel, companion piece to our wonderful Artemis Fowl series, and Jonathan Stroud, The Outlaws of Scarlet and Brown. Come on, guys.
Here I am.
Oh, hi there. How you doing?
Oh my goodness.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi. Is it like 2 o'clock in the morning for you?
No,
It feels
no.
like it. Feels
It
like
does,
it. Dark. Dark. And
I've already been out for dinner, so I don't know how this is going to go. I'm sure it'll be fine. Now that I'm never embarrassed by questions, Valerie, thanks for that. That is like opening the floodgates.
Yeah. I've taken a note of that one.
I did talk about nappies the first time you came to the shop, Eoin. So
That is true.
And that's been many years.
Diapers.
So excited that you're both here. Lots of people are posting things and getting ready for questions. But I would love for you two to talk about both of your series and your craft and your craziness. Let's just go there. So I'm getting off the screen.
Okay, see you later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Owen, it's so good to see you again.
I know it seems like a long time since we hit the road together. And actually we're in Blue Willow personally, but that was a great tour we did. I really enjoyed that. Hopefully they'll let us do that again sometime. We can manage to get a book out at the same time and go on the road with your bag of tricks.
Synchronize our inspiration. Yeah.
I was always amazed how you got into America with a sword and chains and everything, because I couldn't, I always got interrogated coming in, but they would just let you in and you say, yes, this bag has chains, magic dust.
Welcomed in with all my ghost hunting kit. I have to, those who don't know, I was promoting the Lockwood & Co books at the time. So, it wasn't just my personal preferences. I had some ghost hunting swords and salt bombs and all kinds of stuff. But I just went from state to state, carefree and happy, and never stopped.
It was great for me because we did an event together, and that was like an hour long, and we just had so much fun with your ghost hunting kit, and the kids just adored it. That would take a lot of pressure off me, and I could just sit back and watch you work your magic, and it was really great. So it's actually quite selfish. That's the reason I want to go out again, because I'm getting old. It's hard work. And
you could do one third less work essentially.
You could actually dress me up as the ghost hunter, and then I wouldn't have to do anything.
But I think you've actually got a point. Having props is always good, I think.
Yeah, it is good.
You don't go in for props yourself?
I would, having seen you do that, and I went out with another guy who was a magician when I was doing the Warp series. I don't know if we were together on. I think I might have been doing the Warp series when we went out.
I think there was one. We did one where you. The Warp, yeah.
But when another time, Seal, who is with us tonight, Seal sent out a magician with me, and the kids just loved it. And I realized you cannot beat a magician in a school, because he would just bring someone up and do the old fake guillotine, cutting off your finger, and it doesn't matter how old you are, that just works every time. And it was the simplest fake blade, but he was such a great performer. And initially he was supposed to go on for like 5 minutes, and then I talked him into going on longer, and then eventually I was going on with him, and by the end of the tour I was kind of his backup.
55 minutes of magic.
I love to watch performers work, and I'll count you in there just to sit back and see how do they deal with the kids, and because you never stop learning, I don't think, in this job, how to better make the event go smoother and bring it to a higher level. So I love to see experts at work.
I do think there's a real joy at being on stage with you or with other authors. I mean, magicians aside, I think the pleasure of seeing other people talk and present their work and give insight. So it always, I think you get more than the sum of your parts if you've got two or more people on stage just chatting away, and doing it virtually is it's a little different, but it still allows us to bounce off each other and get a bit energized, which is what you do in your podcast that you double booked that you've been doing with Andrew Donkin recently. And I sit there in the car on a sort of typically grim English afternoon, waiting for the kids at the bus stop, and but I turn it on, and it's like you're there in the car with me, and it's good. If you were, but it's got that kind of that warmth and that just the pleasure of hearing you guys talk. So it's definitely the way to go. Podcasts are fantastic things.
Well, it's something that Andrew and I should have been out touring, because we're doing a graphic novel called Global, but that was delayed for a year with a lot of things. So where we had space for a tour, we decided we would just do this little podcast, because both of us were spending, as you do, I know, quite a bit of time on social media answering questions. It's, well, why don't we just record this and put it out? And I have a guy who does some of my social media stuff, so he said, well, you don't do a lot on Instagram, why don't I just I'll edit this, and that's what he does. But we wanted it to sound like literally this: you're in someone's sitting room and you're just having a chat. And our shtick is, as I was telling you, he's very prepared, and I come ostensibly unprepared. So I don't even know who the guest is, and I don't know what we're talking about. And that's kind of what obviously I do know these things, but I pretend not to. And it's a little bit of fun. And if you haven't heard Double Booked, I think we've done 5 episodes now, and it's all up on iTunes or wherever you get your. We've had you on, of course. You were
I was going to say, that episode 2 was particular highlight.
It was the best one. The best.
It's just ever so slightly downhill since, but it's no. I mean, I was listening to
MG Leonard. We had
and she's absolutely absolutely fantastic. Brilliant anecdote about Boris Johnson, which
brilliant. And she was the first guest I didn't know, and I hadn't met. You were on. We had Jenny Valentine on.
Jenny Valentine,
So we had Cressida, How to Train Your Dragon, and we know those people really well, and so it was straight into conversation, just a bit like this. But and I was a little worried that MG, I wouldn't be able to have that familiarity, but she just straight away, she was utterly charming and hilarious, and we just sat back and listened to her spin a few tales. And that is an event I would like to go to. I would like to see her live and pick up a few tricks. And
well, it was interesting that she said that she'd been she'd trained as an actor. You could really tell because it was just the performance, even the way that she read a little excerpt from her new book Twitch, and she read it beautifully, and then just the articulation of the event. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. So
I know, because when I read, I feel I'm not doing myself any favors. You read really well. You have a lovely reading voice, but maybe we all feel like that we don't like our own voices.
I think you read. No, I mean, I've listened to you many a time, and I think it's always the sound of your own voice is a bit.
Yeah. It's always a little bit. A little bit trying. But another event that was great, the one we do with Rick, you know that one, when there's about 4 or 5 of us. We've done that twice now. Me, Rick, and a few other writers. And that's always fantastic. And Rick is kind of the boss man there, the MC. But so there's always a huge audience for Rick, obviously.
Well, it's lovely, and he's great, isn't he? Because he's generous with his.
Mega Awesome Adventures. Seal has just sent me the name over. But he's so generous, and he could easily take the spotlight and be the star, but he just sits back and he lets the other writers.
It's a beautiful thing, and I think in general, authors, we have this sort of weird solitary existence, and here we are in our little cubby holes, and actually we all get a certain pleasure and a release of we're in the company of others, and then with an audience as well. There's so many sort of balls sort of ricocheting around the conversation in all sorts of different directions, and it's just a joy, I think.
Absolutely. I think Disney Hyperion, to be fair, really cultivate that. bringing their authors together, and they do it in New York as well, and letting the authors meet and talk. And I think that's so important for us, just to feel like you've got comrades out there who are going through exactly the same pleasures, but also sometimes difficulties. And also, if like me and you, we do pretty well, so we don't like to moan. But when we're on our own,
Yes,
and there's no camera,
that's right.
we can complain about the same things. Never Seal. We never complain about Seal because he's amazing. And also, he's on this call. So, but no, we're very lucky to have, I think, the team.
Well, and I think it. Yeah, the same thing applies when you talk with the audience, with our readers. You know, especially in the last couple of years, where all of us, wherever we are, we've all been the sort of, we've all become quite isolated, and everyone's different things. So the delight you get as a reader or as a writer when you're just in a room with other people, you know, talking and sort of recounting your own experiences it's gold dust, really. Well, certainly
you have you have to try and remember that even though we've said a lot of stuff 1,000 times, and it's the first time a lot of the young people will hear it, so you have to try and give it the same passion that you did 20 years ago for me, when I, or 30 years ago nearly, when I started doing tours. And sometimes the young people or the kids, they have the best questions, and it's so piercing.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's so funny. My favorite question, this is a funny one, but I remember this little girl had her hand up and this was when I was touring with a picture book. You may have told you this. She had her hand up for ages. She had it for so long, she was holding it up with her other arm. Yeah. And she was like, argh! And we passed her the microphone, and she had to wait until it came in to the middle of the row. And her question was, can I hold the microphone? That was the entire question. She just wanted to hold the microphone. And so the answer was, yes, you can. So she just held the microphone like a little kitten for a few seconds and then passed it on. So that was a lovely moment. And I didn't have to reveal anything. So fantastic.
You relax for another 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I did I don't know whether you've managed to do anything live, visited any schools or anything.
No, not for a while.
COVID. I've done one just about a month ago. I went into a school for the first time and did it, and just the energy, the sheer light of actually being there in the same room, and the questions and the excitement and the body language. Virtual events are fantastic, and they're obviously the way to go at the moment. But being in a room with the kids or with your readers is something that you can't replicate the other way.
Did you notice any heightened excitement? Was it different, or was it kind of
in myself? I did. I was kind of hopping around. I had to have the mask on while I was going through the school, and I wasn't. But when I got in there, it's like, okay, you're allowed to take your mask off now. You're on the stage, and I really felt it. Like you were saying, you do these things time and again over the years, but actually they are always new, and you always get new questions. I mean, I swear that the number of years I've been doing it, but there are always questions that are phrased in a new way, or there's a little new insight. And I never remember them afterwards, because you're in the, I don't know about you, but you're kind of in the moment. So you're just answering the question, you give the answer, and you go to the next one. So it's all very short memory. I'm annoyed by this, but it was an absolute delight to be there.
I especially love if you turn up at a school, and this has happened to us and both of us, when there's artwork prepared. I mean, that's the greatest tribute I think you can ever get, when you turn up and the kids have done, I don't know, paper mache relief wall hangings.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
And people think we just kind of go in and we're, blasé about it, but actually it almost brings a tear to your eye to see these. And especially as a teacher, I know all the work that went in, and I know the teacher had to really make that happen. So every time I do appreciate that.
And those are things that you never forget. Actually, that I still remember an awesome one near Seattle, when I was promoting my first Bartimaeus book, which is going back nearly a couple of decades. But a guy called Michael Thorson, who was the librarian in this school in the outskirts of Seattle, and it was just what you described. You kind of go in, and there were these banners and these little flags, and each one was a different kid, and they designed it around my book, and it was basically the whole school seemed to have been decorated. It was just it was like I was royalty or something. It was quite an extraordinary, humbling kind of experience. That the energy that this one guy had, and he was able to then channel it out for several hundred kids. Absolutely terrific.
Well, a good teacher, I think, can be infectious in that way, in that his energy can travel out to hundreds of kids in a school, and just a good headmaster can really change an entire school. So that leads me nicely, well, not really nicely, it's a terrible segue, but I'd love to know a little bit more about the Lockwood TV show and how that's going and where it's at, and have you seen much, and have you met anybody, and have you read the script, and just answer any four of those questions. Be very happy.
I'm hugely, it's going really well. I'm not allowed to sort of say anything. It's one of these, it's been done. Netflix are doing it, and I would think it's going to come out next year.
Right. So it's really progressing then. It
started filming it in the summer, and they're going to continue filming through till probably, I think, January, February. So that there's a huge sort of swathe of time where they're kind of creating this series. And
that's amazing.
I went down in the summer. They were filming it just outside London, and so my family and I drove down. We were there crack of dawn, and my family were extras, which was
that's fantastic.
I made it a good day, and I was there in the kind of the hub, the room where all the editors were, and I was watching it being done on screen, and I met some of the key members of the cast who are absolutely.
Can you just tell me who those people were?
No, I'd love to. I'll have to do this again in 6 months' time, where I'll be able to, give you
Excellent.
Yeah, I keep asking. I think, can I just Instagram something? No.
Can you just ask them? Do they need a little grey-haired Irish man for anything?
We've got a couple of months.
A chimney cleaner or something.
Sort of sweep in the corner. Who pops up? Well, no. Speaking of which, I think I'm scheduled. I'm scheduled to go down to have an appearance in the corner.
Oh, fantastic! Well, congratulations, because it's such a great series, and it'll make it brilliant. It'll be brilliant. I can't wait to see how they make your imagination come alive on screen. I think it's
very special. I mean, but you've already you've experienced this already.
Yeah. To an extent. I mean, I remember I did have that moment of bringing my kids on a set, and but it wasn't this movie, but the last thing they made of mine was years ago. But the BBC made Half Moon Investigations, which was a really old book I did. In Glasgow. So they invited me to bring my boys and my wife Jackie, you know Jackie, my boys, and to Glasgow. So I was doing the festival in Edinburgh, so it's only an hour across to Glasgow. So I went, and they said to my son Finn, "Do you want to be an extra?" Because it was about a school, and he said, "Yeah, brilliant." So they gave him the uniform, and they slicked down his hair, and they gave me a haircut. He thought this is the best. And Sean said, "I want to be an extra," but he was only like 5. So they said, "Oh, you're too young to be in this school, but why don't you be the director?" And he was like, "Yeah." So they sat him in the director's chair, and they said, "Okay, Sean, you say action." And Sean said action, and they said, "Now you say cut, Sean," and you say cut. And when it came out, Finn was cut from the scene, and he blamed Sean because he was the director. But all my family came over. They didn't come over to see the show. They came to see Finn in the show. And they hadn't told us. They didn't tell us Finn was cut. So we were all sitting there.
That's a blow, actually. That's quite a downer, isn't it?
And then I was cut from the Artemis Fowl. I had a scene, and then I was cut. But I knew that was.
You were cut as well. Oh no.
I was cut. My voice is in there, but they cut my body, Jonathan. I don't know what that means. but obviously my head
Just had
and
it, had
torso.
it slightly too high on the.
I think I was too handsome. I think they didn't want me to outshine Colin Farrell. I think that's what it was.
Well, no, I can understand that. Yeah, just everything gets unbalanced.
Too
But,
handsome. Yeah, we both had
well,
that
no,
problem.
we had a
Just
similar
thinking-
thing actually when my family were basically the scene was that we have the heroine in the foreground, and my family walk past her behind, and that's just this moment where they walk past, and they did this sort of several times, and it all looked really good, and we all went into the sort of editorial thing to have a look at it, and my youngest son Louis, who is 6. He was by sort of quirk of fate, he was positioned on the wrong side of his mum. So as they go past, you kind of see him, but he's basically pretty hidden behind.
Oh no! Oh, tragic.
So he was there watching this, quite. And we had the director and the producers, and everyone was looking at it kind of seriously. And he said, "Oh no, you can't see me. I think we're going to have to do this again." So he was quite adamant that this was. It really wasn't much cop, to be honest. So I escorted him out quite fairly rapidly. At that
That's another £100,000, but it's worth it.
It probably would be for my peace of mind when I get home. But yeah, so but tell me about your the new book.
Well, the new book is so
avoid talking about it at this all through the
well,
last.
you know what I'm like, Jonathan. I don't like. I'd much rather talk about your stuff. But the new book is just out, and it's so new that I don't even have it yet. But I believe it's lovely. Valerie probably is going to hold one up there.
Oh, here we go. Look at that.
It's definitely my favorite cover. I think that artist is amazing.
It's a cool one, yeah.
That scene on the front there, that Valerie is my beautiful assistant. She's from the old Magic days. It's the twins, Miles and Beckett, and they're hiding. I don't know if you know this, but in London Bridge, there was a mortuary in Victorian times, and they used to get the bodies that would float up on the river, and they would get a long gaff, and they would pull these bodies in, and then they would store them in this room, which was the London Bridge mortuary. And this was a real thing, but they had to shut it down because the smell was so bad that even the horses wouldn't stay tied up to London Bridge. And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. But I also thought, well, MI5 and MI6 are just up the river. So what if they reactivated this morgue and just used it as like a company morgue, and where they would do autopsies of sensitive corpses. I don't mean sensitive corpses as in, but just sensitive politically. So obviously someone is in there that Miles and Beckett want to investigate. Their greatest enemy, Lord Teddy Bleeding Dry. So they don't believe he's dead, and they might
he's
be
back
right
again.
now.
Well, I to be honest, I didn't, because he does have a tendency to keep popping up, doesn't he?
He's great. I so enjoyed writing him because he's so outrageous that I thought, I've got to bring him back for the last book. And so he's the main protagonist. And what I loved about a lot of adventure books when I was young is that a lot of them were based on revenge. But nobody just went up to someone and, pushed them under a car. It was always this massive, complicated plan where, for some reason, they didn't just want to get revenge. They wanted to take everything really slowly and make the person suffer. I suppose the Count of Monte Cristo is the big one there, where he escapes from a prison after 20 years. And instead of just going up to the guy and shooting him, he decides, well, first I will impersonate a duke, and then I will buy everything he owns, and it's just so. But the reason why is because otherwise you've got no book if it's just over in 2 chapters. So I decided I would try and come up with the most convoluted revenge plot ever. And it's referenced several times in the book. He said, I know this is you because it's really convoluted and unnecessary. So it's mad and ridiculous, but I do think it's possibly my funniest book. I just really.
Oh, wow. Well, that's, yeah. Gosh.
So I'm Valerie. Only Valerie knows because she's the only one with a copy. So, but I hope people enjoy it. Yeah, I hope it's a good send off for the fan.
Yeah, we have them ready to go out.
Good stuff.
And we're so excited. And Eoin, we've been with you since the very beginning. And
day one, since the first tour, I was in
good.
your store, in 2001.
Wow.
Yeah. And Jonathan, can I just congratulate you as well? You've just been shortlisted for quite a big award in the UK. I saw that on your Instagram, and the book is
Oh
just
yeah, thank you.
so
Yeah,
congratulations on that. It's a lovely thing to happen, I think, when you have a new book and we're insecure authors. We'd like to think it's a good book, but we're never sure. But then when you get a couple of little nods like that, especially for someone prestigious, so congratulations and well done. And
Thank you.
I presume
Yeah.
there's 2 or 3 more Scarlet and
Well,
Browns coming.
listen, I
There's
can give you.
questions about that. There's questions about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
right,
don't
okay.
answer that one. Don't answer that
Listen,
one.
I'll just sort of.
Are we ready to go with questions,
I am
Valerie?
ready to go, and
Okay,
I'm
okay.
going with Simon, and Simon is asking for both of you, what are your favorite characters from your books?
Okay. That's tough.
Wow.
I'll go first. I think I like Holly Short, who is in the Artemis Fowl books, because she's kind of the hero, and she is the moral compass for everybody. So whenever you're doing something wrong, you just could ask yourself, would Holly do this? And if the answer is no, then it's either something that's up tall that you can't reach, or it's something wrong. And usually it's something wrong, and then well, then Artemis shouldn't be doing it either.
And Jonathan?
It's important to have a moral compass, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the Bartimaeus the genie from first series is still up there as he was the kind of character that changed everything for me, because it was when I discovered his voice that I kind of realized the kind of writer I actually was. I'm sure it's the same with Eoin, that you can write books that are successful and that you go out in the world, but don't necessarily tap into the deep writer that you actually are, or the true writer that you are. And Bartimaeus was sarcastic and grumpy and real know-all, and just full of verbal energy. And as soon as I became him, it was a different ball game.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Camille wants to know, Jonathan, regarding Owen's story about you traveling with a sword, was it real?
No. I think even the security guards at the various airports, they would have stopped me if it was a real. Well, the problem was that in the Lockwood gang use rapiers to fight the ghosts that they meet, and so ideally I should have had a rapier, but that would be difficult to get into hand luggage. So what I had was this rather cool folding sword made of plastic, but it was nice and silver and quite large, and I just sort of had it folded up inside this bag. So it could have done some damage, though. I'm sure there were various kids that Owen and I saw them swinging it around with completely naked. We nearly decapitated a few teachers. So yeah, not really.
Not real. But I do remember Jonathan would say, "Now just stand still and hold the sword." And then as soon as our backs were turned, these kids would be like, "Ah," like pirates.
And you never quite know, do you? Because there's that moment where you summon somebody up onto the stage, and you've got to look, and there are some that you think, I'm not going to touch you with a barge pole because you've got a wild look.
They have that look like, give me the sword. They really want the sword.
Because they've got these plans of revenge. That's the thing. They've been reading more books.
Oh, and the next question is for you, also from Camille. What about the process of writing for the Fowl Twins has been different than writing the Artemis Fowl series? And what other projects are you working on? But
thanks, Camille. I think with the Fowl Twins, they're a lot more. I don't want to. They're probably more on the absurd side, and I just didn't try to hold myself back at all. I just really let go. I think with the Artemis, they're quite scientific. They are funny, and there's a lot going on. But with the Fowl Twins, those kids are slightly younger, so they have no inhibitions whatsoever. They don't think they're older. And I put the character of Beckett in there because he's like a time bomb dropped into the story. He's so elemental. He's almost feral. In a good way. So he really drives that story off in unexpected directions that it wouldn't go with Artemis or Miles on his own, because if he sees a snail, he'll want to pick it up and lick it. He's just that kind of kid. And that really works for dramatic purposes when you've got someone who's really buttoned down like Miles, and then you just drop this outdoorsy type crazy guy like Beckett in. It's drama. And I have two sons, and one
Mm.
of them is slightly like Miles, and one of them is slightly like Beckett. So I just take all their situations and exaggerate them 1,000%, and I end up with the Fowl Twins. So I think I was more relaxed writing them, and I enjoyed myself, and I would be out here giggling, like the 10-year-old boy that I once was, and so it was a lot more enjoyable, and I really wanted them to move faster, so that you started that book, and then when you finished it, you just close and you go, phew, I'm tired now. I need a drink and I'm going to have a nap because I laughed so much, and I had such a good time. So it was just more enjoyable for me. So I hope it'll be more enjoyable for you.
And Beckett is great because he all those qualities you said, but he's got a kind of innocence as well, hasn't he? Which I think is a really underrated thing. You can have plots with all these sort of bad guys and all the sort of sinister things, and actually having a figure in there who has this sort of lightness and this kind of that it kind of, it likes souffle. It just brings everything, makes everything much more easy to swallow.
And he's no guile. And I think if you're reading that book, you really want Beckett to be okay. Like you really don't want anything to happen to him. He's like a baby that you want to look after. And it's a good plot device for me. And I really like that character. And my son has that quality, my older son, where you just want to take care of him. And I think that helps the reader to latch on to that character.
All right, Simon is asking for both of you, Owen and Jonathan, where did you get the ideas for each of these new books? So your most current books, kind of what was the little flame there?
Well, that's So The Outlaw Scarlet and Brown is set in a kind of futuristic Britain, which has undergone some kind of slightly unspecified cataclysm, and the landscape's rather different, and there are far fewer people, and they all live in these little towns with fortifications around them, and there are weird beasts and cannibals roaming around, and there are different influences, but one of them was sort of, not to get too political, but one of them was the whole Brexit scenario, which the UK has been dealing with in the last few years, where there was a real sense in which the country was kind of fractured. And a lot of people, myself included, who had been quite, complacent about the country, suddenly started to sort of think a little bit about, okay, what kind of country are we living in? And so, being a kind of weird fantasy writer, I kind of transmuted that sort of uncertainty and sense of questioning into this futuristic thing where the country has almost literally fragmented, and you've got different kingdoms, and people are kind of turning inwards and getting kind of frightened by what's outside. And I think that's quite an international thing. Like most countries, there's this tendency to get worried about what might be coming out, hitting your community. So there are all these things that are bubbling along, but fundamentally, I was kind of keen on doing a sort of English Wild West, and having a couple of roguish outlaws running around. And as Owen said, it's about doing something that gives you real pleasure and makes you laugh and makes you frightened or just makes you happy.
Were you influenced by Westerns or Western movies or Western books, or was it just kind of a casual interest?
Actually, Owen, I owe you big time, because do you remember on one of our forays round America, you pointed me in the direction of the Sisters Brothers.
Great book.
Which is absolutely fantastic book, and that sort of lodged in my mind as something. I thought, this is just so great. And so it took a few years later, when I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to write next? The idea of something that had this kind of slightly Western tint to it came naturally thought. So I owe you at least sort of 5% of my royalties, should I ever get any.
It's funny that if someone said an English Western, you wouldn't expect it to work as well as you've made it work. You can put any two genres together if you do it well, can't you? And you've done that so well, and you've kind of invented a new genre now. I think it's kind of a Northwestern. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's brilliant. I love it. So congratulations.
Thank you. But I mean, you often you can overstate these things. I think you start with a particular thing, and then you them up, and you see what happens. And usually, what happens is that the characters bubble to the surface, and it's them that lead you into whatever it is. This new world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with Artemis, it was, or with the Fowl Twins, it was quite simply, I had these two boys in my life, my sons, and I could watch them bickering all the time. And they never fought because they love each other. And Finn's quite a bit older, but they still enjoyed this to needling of each other. And they would argue about anything, toast, jam, whatever was in the room that could become the subject of argument. And especially football teams, they both love Man United, the English soccer team, and they would bicker about that. And it was their approach to things, how they got their way with completely different approaches. That's what inspired me. And an example of this was, I've told this story before, we lived in France for a year, and both the boys had to go to French school. So the older boy, I said, now you're going to have to speak French, Finn. And he said, no. I said, Finn, you're here for a year. You have to speak French. He said, I will make these people speak English. I said, that will not happen, Finn. You can't do that. It's an entire school. You cannot beat a school. But about 3 months later, the teacher called me in and he said, Mr. Colfer, your son Finn has everybody speaking English in this terrible accent. So he changed the whole class. But I love the idea that these kids who are now in their 20s are in university speaking in a Wexford accent, which is great. Where's my homework, hon? Really bad Wexford. But my other son, then I said to him, you're going to have to learn to speak French. And he said, yes, but I will learn 3 words. I will learn yes, no, and maybe. And that is all he learned. And every time a teacher asked him a question, he would say oui, and he would do a little or no, and or peut-être. That's all he ever said. And at the end of the year, he got a very good mark in his oral French because he just was very convincing with the but he learned 3 words and he had a plan. And that's so Miles and Beckett. One guy is just going to go in there and change everything, and the other guy has a very specific plan. And I love that dynamic. And so I said they have to be in the Fowl family. And it's great to have that kind of inspiration right upstairs. So once again, I have traded on my family name.
Okay, we have lots more questions. Camille would like to know, Eoin, if you're planning to write any more YA books.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a forward thinker in that I don't know usually what I'm doing next, but I am working on a YA book at the moment. All I can say is it's a ghost story.
Oh, wow.
So I'm following in Jonathan's footsteps there. And I'd say it'll be 23 before it comes out, but I have other stuff on the way. I have a picture book with PJ Lynch, you know PJ Lynch, Valerie, and in picture book with Chris Judge, who's a wonderful artist from Ireland as well. So, and a graphic novel with Andrew and Gio. So I'm going to have a lot of YA stuff coming. And yeah, it's busy. And I'm sure, well, Jonathan, I don't know if I can say, but you're finishing a first run on the next Scarlet and Brown book.
Next Scarlet and Brown, yes.
That's the next question, actually.
Oh, is it? Oh.
How many books do you expect in the Outlaws?
I think, following Owen's example with the Fowl Twins, I think I'm thinking 3. I think that's got a satisfying shape to it. So I've written the first draft of the second book, and Owen and I were kind of chuckling about it, saying that at this point I've handed it in now, so I'm now sitting here thinking, great, it's pretty much done. I can have a lovely drink and chat with friends in Houston, and it's all good. And then, of course, within a few days, the editors will get back to me, and who knows what gloom and despondency will. But it's always a good moment when you hand in a draft, because then the book exists. Then I can get run over by a bus, and the book is in some way already out in the world.
Good.
Yeah. The best comment.
Maisie,
I did have a comment from an editor once saying, when I handed in at first, I don't want to depress you, Jonathan. I had a comment back saying, I loved everything except the story and the characters.
Yeah, the writing, yeah.
Right.
The words.
Well, everyone is doing that. Maisie says she loved the first book, and if you could share, can you share anything about the second book?
I think you should share.
I will share. Well, I will share one thing, which is that which I'm pleased about, which is that the first book has you find out quite a bit about the story of Albert, who's one of the two protagonists. You uncover quite a bit about him, but you don't really uncover very much about Scarlett, who's in a way the main character. And she's got, you can tell she's got all sorts of secrets and hidden traumas and things, and you get a few clues. In the second book, the focus is very much on her, and we do learn everything about her backstory, which is I think is the kind of beating heart of this book.
Great. That sounds great. Exciting. I can see a commenter saying, "Yay, I love Scarlett."
Oh.
Caroline Roberts.
Oh, so, thanks, Caroline.
Caroline. Oh,
Caroline. Yeah, that same Caroline.
It's the same Caroline.
I think we have time for one more question. There are a lot of questions. Camilla's actually apologized for sending so many questions in,
Okay.
but I think you've answered most of them. That's all good. It's all good. You guys have done it. And I am looking forward more to the Western. I heard a little piece this morning on NPR about Jane Campion's new film, which is
Power of
a
the
Western.
Dog.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I feel like a good Western.
What and it helped me out here, Cumberbatch.
Benedict.
Yeah,
Benedict.
Benedict. Yeah.
He's not apparently the most likable character in the whole film, according to what I heard. So.
That's what I heard. He's a very good baddie. That's what I heard. So
that's what you want. You want a very good baddie. Okay, guys, I'm going to end with one last question. And I think you've heard it before, Owen, but I'm going to ask it again of you. And that is, our signature question is, what book means home to you right here in your heart? Oh, wow. And it could be a book from your childhood.
Yeah.
From now.
I think most of us, when you're asked that question, you do tend to go back to your childhood and find. For me, it's the book or the books that made me a reader, and so I haven't read this. It's Huckleberry Finn for me. I haven't read that for 20 years. But what is important to me about that book is it was the moment I knew, wow. I'm a reader now. This is it for me, because I went to lengths to finish that book. I got it one evening. I didn't finish it. I had to go to school the next day. I brought the books to school, and we had those desks that you could lift the lid, and I put the book under the lid, and I lifted the lid a little bit, and I read the book. Yeah, that's like that, Valerie. And I read this book all day in class. And the reason I loved it so much was the voice, Mark Twain's inimitable and wonderful voice that he used for Huckleberry, because it was a first person narrative. And a lot of the books I'd read up to then, I loved them. I really loved them. But I never thought, if you're a kid, half your mind is going, well, something could happen and I could end up in this place. And if I could be there, would they let me hang out? And with all the heroic princes, I thought, no, I'd probably just be, I wouldn't be one of the popular kids. But with this book, I thought, if something happened and I fell out of the sky on the Mississippi and landed on this raft, would Huck and Jim let me stay? And my answer was, yes, they would, because they were not the popular kids themselves. They were just, in fact, they were unpopular in certain areas. So I just felt a connection to that book, even though it was in a different continent and a different time that I had never felt before. And funnily, I'm sorry to stretch this answer, but funnily, I met that teacher many years later, and I told that story at the event he had brought his class to, and he met me after, and he said, I talked to your dad about that. I knew you used to read under the desk, he said, but I always thought you were learning, and I'm never going to stop a child learning. Yeah, and I thought that was the most enlightened answer ever.
That's a good teacher, that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the book for me. What about you, Jonathan?
Well, I think you do have to go back into your into the deep recesses of your childhood, really. And funny enough, Huckleberry Finn, just as a side note, that was another influence for Outlaw Scarlet and Brown, because it has river journey. And in one of the things I wanted to do in Scarlet and Brown was to have a kind of slightly rubbish English equivalent of their Mississippi, where it's just It's really rubbish. It's short and a bit narrow, and but nonetheless, you go through the country and you start to get visions of what the landscape they're in.
Yeah.
In terms of the question, I suppose one of the books that I think very early on I read was The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame.
Oh yeah. Brilliant.
I think it's an absolute cornerstone of the whole sort of children's lit, certainly in the UK. And it's about the Thames, and the Thames is this runs through it again, and it's like a vision in a way of an England almost without people, but with the animals, and it's very beautiful, very melancholic, but quite sad actually, but also has a tremendous amount of humor in it, and it's this sort of fusion of these quite English traits. As a very small child, I kind of sucked it in, and it's in there in quite a deep place.
And it shouldn't. I mean, if you think about that, if you try to pitch that now, it's about these animals, and they're not. I don't mind animals having human characteristics, but they're not kid animals. Like, these are grown up.
They're all bachelors. They're all
bachelors. Yeah.
They all kind of wander around with each other. The old badger coming. It's deeply dubious. Or seen as being. But again, it's this there's an innocence. There is this tremendous innocence that comes through, and quite a unique voice and vision that this guy had.
Oh, wonderful! Absolutely wonderful.
Beautiful book.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I love those. We did have, and Jeffrey is saying that it's a bummer that we have to wrap up, but at some point I know you guys need to kind of wrap up your evening. And we'll be back in the bookshop here in a minute selling books, which is what we love to do and talking about books. And I want to thank both of you so much, Owen and Jonathan. Both of you are such dear friends of the shop, and to give of your time to share with your fans.
It's a pleasure.
Our Blue Willow fans, we are so thrilled to have you here, and we will continue, of course. Here we go. One more shameless.
What a great cover!
Right?
Great cover, Jonathan. I love your cover. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Owen.
Yeah, good to see you, Jonathan.
Yeah, take care, guys.
All right, take care, everybody.
See you soon. See you soon in person.
Bye.
Next time I'm over.
I
Yeah, I
know,
hope so.
in person.
Fantastic.
All right.
Bye.